Yogah Karmasu Kaushalam.
Hello friends, this is Dr. Kishor Bhanushali. I'm working as a Director Research at Karnataka University, Gandhinagar. Before we begin, I would like to thank UGC Human Resource Development Center, Gujarat University, Ahmedabad, and the entire team, Dr. Jagdish Joshi and his team, for giving me this opportunity to take session on Reserve Bank of India and its policy in this refresher course in Commerce and Management. In next 1 hour or time that we have, we are going to talk about Reserve Bank of India and some of its policy which are more relevant in the present context. Reserve Bank of India has been in debate, in discussion right now because of recent policy change during the COVID period and also post-COVID. Recently, the repo rate has been increased by 50 basic points, and again there was a debate in terms of changing inflation rate in India, the action taken by Reserve Bank of India, whether the actions are correct or not. So we are going to talk about few of those things. If we talk of Reserve Bank of India, it was established in the year 1935, 1st April 1935 to be precise, under the Reserve Bank of India Act 1934. And if we read the preamble of Reserve Bank of India, why preamble is important is it gives you an idea in terms of what is expected from Reserve Bank of India. So preamble says to regulate the issue of banknotes and keeping the reserves with a view to securing monetary stability in India and generally to operate the currency and credit system of the country to its advantage, to have modern monetary policy framework to meet the challenges of an increasingly complex economy, to maintain price stability while keeping in mind the objective of growth. Now, if you look at this preamble, it talks about what is expected from Reserve Bank of India, and the major functions that are captured within the preamble itself is talking about issuing of bank notes, we call it currency notes, to maintain the reserves, to have monetary stability for the country at large, to manage the currency and credit system, and making a monetary policy which is modern, contemporary one, in order to meet the challenges of complex economy. So economic systems is changing now. We are living in a mode of what you call a VUCA world, a globalized world, where any change is happening in the one part of the country, one part of the world rather, is affecting all the countries. So how do we create a monetary policy framework which is in line with the global scenario? That's what is expected from Reserve Bank of India. And the last line in the preamble says price stability and objective of growth. These are the two major objectives that Reserve Bank of India is expected to play a role. And in the current scenario, price stability and economic growth are two most important talked about variables, and also they are conflicting in itself. Currently, India is facing inflation issues, and in order to control the inflation, Reserve Bank of India has taken certain policy measures like increasing the repo rate, increasing the CRR. And when repo rate is increased, what happens is rate of interest in the market increases, and when rate of interest increases, the investment goes down and it will have negative impact on economic growth. And during the May 4th monetary policy review announcement by Reserve Bank of India Governor Dr. Satyakanta Das, he made it very clear that now we are shifting our focus from growth to price stability. So these are our conflicting objectives, and Reserve Bank of India always try to work towards achieving this twin objective of maintaining the growth at the same time maintaining price stability. So if you talk about the major functions of Reserve Bank of India, as we have just listed about, printing of the currency, maintaining the regulating the entire banking system. So we have nationalized bank, we have private bank, we have foreign banks, we have payment bank, we have small finance bank, we have cooperative banks. So entire banking system need to be regulated for the development of a country, and the regulation of banking system is the role of Reserve Bank of India. Reserve Bank of India has to control the money supply because excess money leads to inflation, and less than required amount of money leads to depressions. So controlling the money supply as per the requirement of a country, it is again a function of Reserve Bank of India. Reserve Bank of India is supposed to work towards a controlling rate of interest, because interest rate has something to do with economic growth. When interest rate is too high, your investment goes down. When investment goes down, your production goes down, GDP will go down, unemployment will increase. Okay, so at the same time, interest rate has something to do with your foreign exchange reserve. Recently, because of a lower interest rate in India and increasing interest rate in nearby countries, there was a fear about Indian foreign exchange reserves going outside India. So that is again a major function of Reserve Bank of India. Then major function comes in the form of controlling of inflation, which is not good. Reserve Bank of India, in case of India, has set up a benchmark in the range of 4% is an ideally expected rate of inflation, and 2% plus minus is a benchmark. So inflation, as long as it is in the range of 2 to 6%, Reserve Bank of India do not intervene much in the market. But in recent scenario, the retail inflation, CPI inflation has already crossed 6%, 7%, 7.5%. That's where Reserve Bank of India has to enter into a market and play certain role in order to control the inflation. And increasing the repo rate, as Reserve Bank of India has done recently, is one of such measures taken by Reserve Bank of India towards controlling an inflation. Other function of Reserve Bank of India also include maintaining foreign exchange reserve, maintaining gold reserve, and also maintaining foreign exchange rate, rupee dollar rate rather we call it. It is again a function of Reserve Bank of India. And Reserve Bank of India, of course, is working as a banker to bank and banker to government. So these are not the exhaustive list, but some of the major functions of Reserve Bank of India. Okay, here uh, in this presentation, we are going to talk about two important functions. One is currency printing, and other is controlling of inflation through a monetary policy. So that's what we are going to talk about in. As far as currency printing is concerned, the major prominent question that comes, and there are misconception among the people in terms of how much currency Reserve Bank of India can print. Of course, printing of the currency is a job assigned to Reserve Bank of India, and only Reserve Bank of India can print a currency notes. Otherwise, it's considered to be the fake currencies. Now, the question is, how much currency Reserve Bank of India can print? The wrong notion that people have, and that is again derived from a historical background of a gold standard, where if we ask the people, ask the question, how much currency RBI can print, people says that it is equivalent to the amount of gold that Reserve Bank of India has, which simply means RBI can print a currency equivalent to the amount of gold that they have, which is wrong. Okay, this notion was prevailing during a gold standard, initially gold standard 1945 onwards, where every currency was denominated with reference to the amount of gold, and that world at large has followed a gold standard. But today it is not the case. We are working on something called minimum reserve system. Against that stipulated amount of gold, RBI can print as much as RBI want. Let's understand with the help of a small example. I've got this currency notes. This is currency notes worth rupees 500. Now, what is the value of this currency? The currency arrives its value not because of that Gandhiji that we have, not because of this trade, not because of RBI written here. Okay, why? If I give you the same size of paper, better quality paper of the same size, still it will not be worth 5 digits. So from where the currency gets the value? Currency gets the value based on a signature of Reserve Bank of India governor. So every currency notes are signed by Reserve Bank of India governor. And why he is signing? Because it is a promissory note. So here RBI governor gives you a promise. I promise to pay the bearer sum of 500. So this is nothing but a promissory note. Now the question is, in order to print this 500 worth of currency notes, what do Reserve Bank need? If you go back to the gold standard, then someone says that Reserve Bank of India need a gold worth rupees 500 to print these currencies. But today, this is not the case. This is just a promissory note. If I go to Reserve Bank of India governor and say that sir, fulfill your promise, what RBI governor can do? Maximum RBI governor can give me 5 currency notes of rupees 100 each. That is fine. And every currency notes worth rupees 100 again are signed by RBI governor with a promise. So what does it mean? Against one promise, RBI governor is giving me 5 promises. Okay, if it is gold standard, then RBI governor is supposed to give me gold equivalent to 500 rupees. But today we are working with a minimum reserve system. What does it mean? It means against a reserve worth 200 crore. Now remember the term, word, amount 200 crore. Out of this 200 crore of reserve, we need 115 crore worth of gold. 115 crore. 115 crore worth of gold and 85 crore worth of foreign exchange, foreign reserve. Against this 200 crore, RBI can print as much as they want. There is no limit. So practically, if you talk about present scenario, as of now, RBI has already issued a currency notes worth more than nearly 40 lakh crore. So 40 lakh crore worth of currencies are already printed. RBI do not have that much of gold with them, and that much of gold is not required, because requirement as per the minimum reserve system is 200 crore of reserve. So against the 200 crores of reserve, within which 115 crore is the gold, 85 crore worth of foreign exchange reserve, RBI can print as much as they can. Okay, gold reserve, we talk in terms of India. Our gold reserve again maybe something like 700 crore. Okay, so RBI do not have that much of gold, and RBI has printed nearly 40 lakh crore worth of Indian currencies. So there is nothing called requirement of gold. So India is working on minimum reserve system. Then the question comes in, if it is not the gold, then how do RBI decide how much currency to be printed? In order to take up that call, what RBI does, RBI print the currency as per the requirement of the country, and RBI has to make sure that excess money supply in the economy should not result into inflation. So it's controlling an inflation. At the same time, there should not be shortage of money. So what they do, they always consider two important components. Component number one, GDP growth. So if your national income, if your GDP If goods and services that you have produced in the country during the period of 1 year, rough forms you call it gross domestic product. If it is increases by 7%, you need 7% excess money to deal out for the transaction of those goods and services. And acceptable amount of inflation is nearly 4%, globally accepted. So 7 plus 4, 11%. So as long as your money supply increases by 11%, you are comfortable. If money supply goes beyond 11%, okay, given that GDP growth of 7%, your inflation rate will be more than 4%. Okay, that is something which has to be taken care of. So how much money RBI can print? It is as per the requirement, not as per the amount of gold that they have. That is something which has to be taken care of. And RBI has already printed nearly 40 lakh crore of money. This amount is available, this detail are available from RBI website. So further detail can be extracted from RBI website. And RBI website has a tab called database. On this database tab, every 15 days RBI releases the data. How much currency they have printed, how much money is there with people, how much currency is there with RBI, how much money is there with commercial bank, what is the total money supply, and entire monetary measures of money supply. We call it M1, M2, M3 and M4. Those data are regularly released by Reserve Bank of India on its website, and those details are available in public domain. For further detail, I'll request you to refer to those information from Reserve Bank of India website. As far as foreign exchange reserves and gold reserves are concerned, those data are again available on Reserve Bank of India website, and it can be accessed from RBI database. Talking about the second important function, it is controlling of inflation. Inflation control is the major function that is given to Reserve Bank of India, and as and when there is inflationary pressure in the economy because of any reason, RBI comes and play its role to control the inflation, and this process is done through a policy called monetary policy. Inflationary pressure in the economy can be built up because of any reason. It could be either because of increasing money supply or because of global crisis. Present inflation scenario that we have in India is because of Ukraine-Russia crisis. The liberal monetary policy that has been followed by Reserve Bank of India during a COVID period, where RBI has reduced the repo rate, reduced the CRR, excess liquidity was pumped into the economy, and the after effect of COVID pandemic, not within India but the world at large is facing, an entire world is facing a problem of inflation, including India. And controlling this inflation is the job assigned to Reserve Bank of India. And Reserve Bank of India control the inflation through a policy called monetary policy. Monetary policy has various objectives, including controlling inflation, increasing the growth, increasing investment, controlling interest rates, and many other minor objectives that monetary policy has. In order to control the inflation, RBI has various tools. We call it weapons. And those weapons are primarily divided into two groups. One group of weapons are called quantitative tool or quantitative weapons. The other group of tools are called qualitative weapons or qualitative tools. What does it, how does it differs? When quantitative tools are used, it affects entire economy, all the sectors, all the segment, all the industries, all section of the society. So everybody is equally affected when quantitative tools are used, whereas qualitative tools are meant for a specific sector, specific segment, and specific group of people, not entire economy at large. Okay, among quantitative tools, and whether RBI use quantitative or qualitative tool, that depends on the RBI's own intention and the objective of that monetary policy. If inflation is a common phenomenon and it want to control the inflation in a short span of time, they use quantitative. If inflationary situation in the economy has arisen because of a specific sector, then it is the qualitative tools which are most prominently used. Here in the screen, you're able to see some of those quantitative tools. So we have bank rate, repo rate, reverse repo rate, CRR, SLR, and OMO is nothing but open market operation. These are some of the most prominently used quantitative tools in order to control inflation by Reserve Bank of India. And the details that are listed here, the rate, are the present rate as available from Reserve Bank of India website. And these rates are prominently displayed on the front page of Reserve Bank of India website. You open Reserve Bank of India website and front page, there is a tab on policy rates where these rates are mentioned. And the updated data about rates are available there. First one is a bank rate. What is bank rate? Bank rate is a rate at which RBI gives long-term loan to commercial bank. Sometimes we call it rediscounting rate because it is the rate at which commercial bank can rediscount the securities that they have with Reserve Bank of India. So it is a long-term rate charged by Reserve Bank of India from commercial bank. So when commercial banks are borrowing money from Reserve Bank of India for a long term or against discounting of the securities, RBI charges an interest rate, and this interest rate is 5.15 as of now. Second comes a repo rate, which was under hot debate last month, this month also. Last month repo rate has been increased by 0.40 basic point. This month on yesterday it was increased by again 0.50 basic point. So repo rate today stands at 4.90. So repo rate is the rate at which commercial bank can borrow money from RBI. So when we as an individual, when we are in need of fund, we go to our bank. For our bank is a commercial bank. So we go to a bank and borrow money. So when we borrow money from our bank charges an interest, whether it's a home loan or car loan or any kind of business loan that they have. So that is rate of interest charged by commercial bank from the customer. So we are a customer for the commercial bank. As we have seen the earlier slide, Reserve Bank of India works as banker to bank. So when commercial banks are in need of fund, where do they go? They go to Reserve Bank of India. So when commercial banks are in need of fund, they can borrow money from Reserve Bank of India. And when commercial banks are borrowing money from Reserve Bank of India, Reserve Bank charges certain rate, interest. And that rate of interest is known as repo rate. So in a simple terms, a repo rate is the rate of interest charged by Reserve Bank of India from the commercial bank. Okay, then we had something called reverse repo rate. Currently stands at 3.35% as per RBI website as on date. Reverse repo rate is a rate of interest given to commercial bank by RBI. Suppose I have got excess money, I can deposit my money with my bank in my savings account or fixed deposit account. I am getting certain interest from a bank. Similarly, when commercial banks have certain fund, excess fund, they can park this fund with Reserve Bank of India and they are given certain rate of interest. That rate of interest is reverse repo rate. Then we have CRR, cash reserve ratio, currently stands at 4.50%. Again, there is a misconception in terms of meaning of CRR. People say that CRR is a percentage which commercial banks are required to maintain in the form of cash. It is wrong. CRR is cash reserve ratio. It is the percentage of primary deposit. Now when you say primary deposit, is primary deposit with the bank by the customer. So if XYZ is a bank, whatever deposit that customer have kept with that bank, say Bank of Baroda have received a deposit from its customer in the form of savings account or fixed deposit, that those are called primary deposit. Percentage of primary deposit to be kept with RBI. So it is not the percentage which commercial banks are maintained with themselves in the form of cash. It is percentage of the primary deposit which commercial banks are required to maintain with RBI. So if CRR is 4.5%, 4.50%, it means 4.50% of primary deposit of commercial banks goes to RBI. So that is fund that is kept with RBI, not with themselves. That is CRR. Second is SLR, which stands for statutory liquidity ratio. Statutory liquidity ratio. Currently it stands at 18%. Again, this is percentage of primary deposit, but it is liquidity. Here SLR is a percentage of primary deposit which commercial banks are required to maintain in the form of liquid asset with themselves. So liquid asset may be in the form of cash or gold or maybe kind of government securities which can be easily converted into cash. It means 18% of primary deposit commercial banks are required to maintain in the form of liquid assets. So commercial bank can maintain in the form of cash, or if they want, they can invest this money in government securities or RBI bonds, which can be easily converted into cash. This is CRR and SLR. Next one is open market operation, OMO. Now here it is RBI's action of buying and selling government securities from open market. It means RBI is selling or buying securities, government bond, treasury bill, RBI bond from the market. RBI can buy the bond, RBI can sell the bond, because one of the functions that of RBI is debt management by the government. So government debt management is done by RBI, and RBI has lot many government securities. Okay, so RBI's action of buying and selling of government securities from the market is called open market operation. So bank rate, repo rate, reverse repo rate, CRR, SLR and open market operation are most prominently used quantitative tool by Reserve Bank of India in order to control inflation. And these are quantitative tools because when any of these tools are used, it affects all the segment of the economy, all the sections of the economy, all the sections of the society. So everybody is affected. It is not sector specific or section specific. That's why these are called quantitative tool. Against that, we have qualitative tool in the form of selective credit control. It means here again credit is controlled, but not for entire economy. It is for a specific segment. Like we had margin requirement. Okay, we have moral suasion, we have direct control. So these are some of the measures which are, when used, they have an influence on a particular segment of the society. Now what we'll do, we'll talk about each of these tools in terms of how this tool can control inflation. Yeah, friends. So let's start with bank rate, or maybe we can add bank rate, repo rate together. So if there is inflation in an economy, what RBI does? RBI increases the bank rate. RBI increases the bank rate, or RBI increases the repo rate. Now when bank rate is increased or repo rate is increased, how does it affect? How does it control inflation? When bank rate or repo rates are increased, money becomes costlier for commercial bank. So when commercial bank approaches RBI for taking loan, RBI charges a high rate of interest. Say for example, repo rate earlier was 4%. Pre-COVID it was 5.15%. Because of COVID it has been reduced to 4%. On 4th of May it has been increased to 4.40, and again on 8th it has been increased to 4.90%. What does it mean? So when commercial banks are approaching RBI for taking a loan, RBI charges high rate of interest. And when RBI is charging high rate of interest, commercial bank also increases their rate of interest. That's where we used to say that because of increase in repo rates, now your EMI will go up because bank increases the interest rate. When interest rate goes up, few people borrow money and money supply in the economy is controlled. And when money supply is controlled, inflation automatically comes down. But here, there is a catch. This rate can work only if commercial banks are borrowing money from RBI. If commercial bank have excess money, they were not supposed to borrow money from RBI. In that case, the increased repo rate may not affect them. But still in that situation, higher repo rate by RBI is an indication to commercial bank, and commercial bank will increase the rate of interest, and something that all the nationalized banks have done. At the same time, when rate of interest are increased, commercial bank also increases the deposit rate. So your FD rate will also go up. When deposit rate increases, people park more money with bank. So money supply in the economy is reduced. When people have less money, the demand goes down, demand for goods and services goes down, and inflation comes down. This is how it works. If you talk of CRR and SLR, CRR is 4.5, SLR 18%, so approximately 22.5% of the primary deposit bank cannot lend to customer. So for every 100 rupees deposit by the customer, 4.50 rupees goes to RBI in the form of CRR. 18 rupees they are supposed to keep in the form of liquid assets. So bank can give loan to the extent of remaining amount. So 100 minus 22.50. Okay, so that much of money is available to bank. Now if there is an inflationary situation, What RBI does? RBI increases this rate, either CRR or SLR. So when CRR or SLR are increased, commercial bank are left with less amount to be given in the form of loan. So when less amount of loans are given, money supply in the economy is reduced, and to that extent, inflation can be controlled. This is how CRR and SLR works. OMO, as we have discussed earlier, open market operation is a tool which RBI uses to control inflation, and when OMO is used, RBI tend to either buy the securities or sell the securities. Now, whether RBI buy the security or RBI sell the security, that depends on whether economy is facing inflation or depression. Say for example, in the situation of inflation, what RBI does? RBI sells the securities. So RBI has the treasury bill of government bond, RBI bond. Those securities, government securities are there with RBI. In the situation of inflation, RBI sells the securities. Who purchases the securities? Two stakeholders. Number one, commercial bank. Commercial bank purchases securities if they have excess money, number one. So if they have excess money, if there are no borrower and banks are having certain liquid assets, they rather invest this excess money in government securities to earn some interest, or in order to maintain that SLR, statutory liquidity ratio, commercial bank purchases the securities as well. So when commercial bank invests money in the securities, that much of money goes to RBI. So commercial banks are now left with less amount of money to be disbursed as a loan in the economy. Other stakeholder who purchase the government securities are people like you and me. We individual customer. We purchase the government securities, and normally in these government securities, rate of interest is very low, nearly 3 to 4%. So not much. But these are the securities which are safest investment. So people who are looking at safe investment, not much worried about interest rates, purchase the securities. And secondly, in order to motivate people, in order to pursue people to buy the securities, what government does? Government gives you tax benefit. Okay, so if you buy government bond, there are certain tax benefit involved here. So when we buy the securities, money goes to government. So in a way, money supply in the economy get reduced and inflation is under control. During deflation, we do the reverse exercise. Repo rate, reverse repo rate, bank rate are reduced. CRR, SLR are reduced. Rather than selling the securities, RBI purchases the securities. During deflation, inflation, they sell the securities. This is how monetary policy is used to control inflation by way of quantitative tools and quantitative weapons. Now, sometimes it happens that our economy is facing inflation, but inflation is not the general phenomenon, and you want to control the credit, you want to control the money supply in a particular sector or in a particular segment. Okay, when quantitative tools are used, it affects all the sectors, but for a particular sector, quantitative tool will not work. So we have qualitative tools like margin requirement. What is margin requirement? If I go to RBI, if I go to my bank and ask for a loan, say for car, I will not get 100% loan. For home loan, they give me around 80-85%. So car loan again 80-85%. Okay, depending on the product. So if I am given 80% value as a loan, that 20% is the margin which I have to pay from my own pocket. And that margin is called margin requirement. These margins are decided by RBI. So if RBI wants more credit to be given in a particular sector, then for that sector margins are reduced. Say for example, RBI want more money in the housing sector, then RBI will reduce margin for housing. If RBI need more fund to be allocated for agriculture, then for agriculture loan margin is reduced. Okay, so that way more money flows to a particular sector, more credit flows to a particular sector, and that sector supply increases. And okay, if inflation is because of particular sector, you want to control the money supply, you want to control the credit in that specific sector, that can be done by increasing the margin. So if we say that inflation is because of more demand in automobile sector, then you increase the margin requirement for automobile. So now instead of 80%, now customer will get only 70% loan, so they have to pay 30% from the pocket. Okay, so ultimately the demand in automobile sector goes down. When demand goes down, price goes down. This is how allocation of resource work. Second is credit rationing. Here it is not primarily for controlling inflation, but is for allocation of limited resources in best possible manner. So under credit rationing, what RBI does, RBI issue a directives to commercial bank in terms of how much money should be given as a loan to different sectors. So there are parameters in terms of, say, certain amount of the loan should be given for primary sector, certain amount for agriculture, certain amount for rural people, certain for artisan, certain amount for poor people. Okay, so the allocation of credit, rationing of credit is suggested by RBI. So if inflation is because of certain specific sector, RBI changes this credit rationing part, which ultimately increases the production in the sector if inflation in that sector is due to low production. So when supply increases, price goes down. Or sometimes it happens that inflation in a particular sector is because of high demand. Then again you reduce the credit, demand goes down, inflation is under control. There is another tool that is used here by Reserve Bank of India called moral suasion. Normally we call it moral persuasion. As we have seen earlier, Reserve Bank of India is a banker to bank, is a regulator to bank. So under moral suasion, what Reserve Bank does is, Reserve Bank issue a guidance to commercial bank with reference to their credit policies. So they issue a guide in terms of be stringent in giving loan, give more loan to agriculture, try to control your credit to automobile sector or housing sector, give more loan to export oriented sectors, give more credit to employment generating sectors. Some kind of guidelines are issued. These guidelines are not binding. It is just a guiding principle. This was called moral persuasion. If commercial bank do not follow it, there is no punishment as such. But since commercial banks are regulated by Reserve Bank of India, any such guiding guidelines issued by commercial bank are taken seriously by commercial bank and they follow it. That's called moral suasion. Then there is something called direct control. In India, probably RBI has never used direct control measure as such, but under direct control, RBI issue a direction to a commercial bank with reference to a credit in certain sector or certain segment. If any of those directives are not followed, RBI can take strict direct action. This may be in the form of closing certain branches of a bank, or maybe suspending a banking operation for a certain period of time, or maybe certain amount of fine imposed on a commercial bank. So those actions are also used. So in order to control inflation, RBI has various tools. Which tool RBI used? That depends on the nature of inflation, the situation of an economy, the growth scenario that we have. Okay, that's where things works. So this is all about the RBI policies and controlling measures. If you have any query with reference to this presentation, this discussion, feel free to get in touch with me at the email address and mobile number given. I've also given my blog ID as well, where you can post your comment. So feel free. And I would again like to thank uh, Professor Jagdish Joshi, the Director, UGC Human Resource Center, Gujarat University,